I thought it would be helpful for us to take a look at a list of the worst stock market crashes in history. There have been some others that they call serious slumps and dives, but this list, essentially, it's the worst ones. Let's take a look. You see, in 1894, this was the first big crash ever. Then, in 1929, this was the famous Black Thursday that brought on the Great Depression that was at least for 10 years. There was another big crash in 1973. The thing I would like to point out to you is, look, since Reaganomics, do you see this, do you remember this big crash in 87 that they called Black Monday? And look, after that, it's just one after another, consecutively, without stopping until it's every year and less than each year. Look at this. So what we want to see is why, since the 80s, has the economy of the United States become so weakened, and how has the even the speculative market become so unstable? Now look, you know, there's a difference between economy and finances. Okay, in these next couple of excerpts, Kepi is going to talk about this. So from this perspective, we're going to get to a deeper analysis of our crises. Let's take a look.
The stock exchange is comprised of a financial process which is a result of the fundamental economy. The real economy is in productivity, and we can say that the productivity is generating the money that is generally invested back into the stock market. And when it is invested in the stock market, these shares are then bought or sold. And it's in the buying and selling of these shares that fabulous profits are made by investors. But the country doesn't profit anything from this because the huge banks, the Federal Reserve Bank in the United States, for example, it's privately owned. So the country is the one that ends up depending on private entities. It's not the country that is printing money, not at all. The ones who make the money, who deal with finance, are in the private sector, the owners of these banks. Take a look at what's happening in relation to this.
The decline in finances and not the economy. First, there isn't a fall in the economic system, but in the financial system.
And what do I mean by this? That if the stock market falls, it's not the economy of the country that is falling. It's the part of the financial process that is falling because finance deals with money. So in relation to speculation, it gives an exaggerated value to what shouldn't have this value, and gives practically no value to what should have value. There are certain manufacturings that are fundamental for the country. Look in second place.
The United States has created a false market economy.
They have made a market economy. This market economy is what is causing all these upheavals in that country, and which can cause the same throughout the world. Now what happens? When this false economy falls, the real economy will arise, and it will generate a lot of well-being, even to the American people. Look now, thirdly.
In this case, it's the financial system that is crumbling. It is fundamental for the world to see that it's good to see a bad system crumbling and returning to the real economy.
So you can notice that a fall in the stock market is fundamental because, for example, the Chicago Exchange determines the value of food throughout the entire world. And we're experiencing big increases in prices, which is making it impossible for some countries to buy food. Countries that don't produce food need to buy from others that do. But they can't due to the very high prices. And also gasoline. Petroleum is now 120 a barrel, So all the economy disappears into the hands of the speculators.
In reality, the science of economy is a relatively simple science. That is, if you have a country that is producing many things, you have to learn how to economize so as not to waste things. Now, if economy is not to be understood by anybody, that's because there's something very deceitful going on behind the scenes, something very corrupt, very masked, so that we can't perceive what is going on. And market economy is something that happens inside of a real economy, not the other way around. Or this idea of a credit economy. Credit economy is what? Putting us in debt to the bankers. This is an orientation that comes from the bankers so that we become dependent to the bankers. A real economy doesn't need to be dependent on bankers. Do you perceive the trick here? So, if we want our country back, we're going to have to learn very quickly how to live without going into debt, how to have a lifestyle whereby we stop spending what we don't have, in order for us not to go into debt to anybody. Therefore, no one will own us. Let's take a look at the next excerpt.
We can talk a little bit about the collapse of the stock market, because the majority of people are still asking themselves, what happened? At the same time, they also think that after a certain time, the market will recover itself, and everything will go back to the way it was, basically. But nobody is asking themselves why this crash happened. So it is our job to search for the cause of things. Because if this collapse took place, it's because something is going on. And that the period of the stock market as dominating economy is over. So, as you know, the stock market worked with an amount of money that was more than $40 trillion. But in reality, what the world really has, that is actually being used, that's functioning country by country, is only 14 trillion. So there is a huge gap here of $26 trillion of money that doesn't exist, other than in the imagination of these delirious people. When a person has a certain amount of money to live by, a quantity of money and assets, and thinks about how to just double that, or much more, wants to have much, much more, even billions. This can only be a person very envious, a very greedy, very sick individual. So the fall of the stock exchange will favor the return of the human being to having a normal life. Therefore, we should even celebrate, commemorate this fall. Now look, there is a difference between economy and finances. Take a look.
Economy and finances. First, the economy is the result of the value that a country produces.
You see, the economy, its money, the goods that a nation has, comes from work, which comes mainly from industry, from agriculture, and also from commerce. It's the result. Therefore, the real money of the nations are these 14 trillion that exist in the entire world. This other 26 trillion does not exist. It's just pure speculation. And secondly,
finance deals with establishing prices of what a country buys and sells.
that is, if an individual has a stock, an action, that is worth 10, in the stock exchange he can artificially elevate this to 20 or 30. But in reality, it's not worth 20 or 30, it's worth only 10. Therefore, the stock exchange creates an artificiality, and this perturbs people's minds. Even those who don't play the stock exchange get upset with what's happening. Look now in third place.
If finances become stronger than the economy, then this topples the nation. Observation: the stock exchange has become dangerous because it cannot support itself.
So look, if you want to change your money in a bank for gold, or solid coins, or some other thing of substance, or silver, this doesn't exist. The banks don't have this. If half the people who have money in the banks take their money out one day, the bank doesn't have the money to pay the client. In other words, they'll go bankrupt. Notice that what is falling apart is an economy that never should have existed, because indeed it's not a real economy. Speculation and the financial part should be a result of the real economy, which is the production of agriculture and industry and commerce also. So this fictitious part is falling, and all the people who live off of speculation, of course, they are not going to want to abandon this area. They are going to do anything to see if they can conserve speculation. This neoliberal economy that was inaugurated by Reagan is failing because it isn't a real economy.